My parents emptied my $60,000 safe to teach me a lesson, then moved my brother's girlfriend into my room, so I packed quietly and left them a surprise. I'm Mora. My parents took $60,000 from my safe, money I worked years to save, and used it to fly my brother to Hawaii. They called it punishment for being too cold, too independent. I thought that was the worst of it. But it wasn't. They installed a hidden camera in my room, told my old teacher I was unemployed, moved my brother's girlfriend into my space, and somehow I was still the problem. Was it really about family or about control, dressed up as love? I woke up before the sun did. The ceiling fan above me spun quietly, casting slow-moving shadows across the beige walls of the room I never chose to return to. I hadn't opened the blinds in weeks. Not because I wanted darkness, but because pretending the world outside didn't exist was easier than facing the one inside this house. Down the hall, I could already hear Dorian's footsteps. Heavy, aimless. He moved like the house belonged to him because to everyone else it might as well have. I got dressed quickly, pulling my hoodie over my tank top, tying my hair into a low bun, and slipping into my worn slippers. Today, I had a pitch, a big one, a UX redesign proposal for a client in Seattle. If it landed, I'd finally have something of my own again. I made my way to the dining table, which doubled as my office since Dorian had taken over the spare room. I plugged in my laptop, booted up Zoom, and inhaled deeply. For a moment, it was quiet. Then I heard it, that distinct dull crash from upstairs, followed by my brother's voice. Mora, we've got a problem. I closed my eyes, took another breath, and walked toward the sound like I was heading into a courtroom. My laptop was face down on the hallway carpet. The screen cracked straight across like a spiderweb had colonized it. Dorian stood there holding a game controller, guilt barely brushing the edges of his face. You were gaming? I asked. It was just for a minute. Yours had better RAM. I thought you thought it was okay to touch something I need to survive. He shrugged. It's not like I did it on purpose. Of course you didn't. You never do. That's when Mom chimed in from the kitchen without even looking up from her morning coffee. Mora, honey, if it's so important, why don't you keep it locked up? I turned to her, stunned. He broke my work computer and you're blaming me. She clicked her tongue. You always make a fuss. It's just a computer, not the end of the world. I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but I didn't because screaming in this house didn't solve anything. It only gave them more ammunition. Mora's dramatic. Mora can't let things go. Mora is impossible to live with, so I walked back downstairs in silence, cradling the broken laptop like a broken part of myself. I texted my client an apology and asked to reschedule the call. I knew the damage wasn't just to the hardware. I sat at the table staring at the wall. Not long after, I noticed something odd behind the bookshelf nearby. A glint that didn't belong. I leaned in, brushed aside a few old cookbooks, and saw a small black lens. No way. I followed the cable down the shelf, traced it behind the wall panel, and into the hallway closet. Buried under old winter coats and my father's broken drill set, it led to a mobile phone. Dad, I called out, my voice low but shaking. He emerged slowly, holding a mug that read, #1, Grandpa. Even though he had no grandkids. What is this? I held up the device with the live feed from my bedroom. He barely blinked. We just wanted to make sure you were okay. Your mother and I, we worry. You've been distant. Distant, I repeated. You're watching me sleep, Dad. He placed his mug down calmly, like we were discussing garden mulch. Better safe than sorry. That phrase echoed in my mind. They'd used it before. When they read my mail, when they borrowed money from my college fund, when they told my ex not to marry me. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of my bed, hands trembling, but heart suddenly still. I took the broken laptop, placed it in a drawer, and opened my backup drive. I began uploading every file I had, contracts, pitches, tax documents to a cloud server under a new name. I encrypted everything. I wasn't sure why yet, but something in me, something small, quiet, and burning told me it was time to prepare. I looked around the room again. The dusty curtains, the carpet stains, the photo of me and Dorian from 10 years ago, still hanging by the closet. This used to be home. Now it was just another problem to solve. 3 days passed, long ones, measured not by hours, but by how many apologies I swallowed to keep the peace. I had borrowed a replacement laptop from my company's equipment pool. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. Barely. That morning, I got up before anyone else again. I cleared the kitchen table, brewed a fresh pot of coffee, and lit a candle by the window. 1 hour. All I needed was 1 hour of quiet. Just 60 uninterrupted minutes to deliver a pitch that could secure me a 6-month freelance retainer with a California-based firm. I texted my family group chat, Zoom meeting from 11 to 12. Please keep things quiet. It's important. Colleen saw it but didn't respond. Dorian left it on read, classic. By 10:55, I was set up. Notes in front of me, slides ready, hair brushed, top changed, pajama bottoms hidden beneath the frame. The standard remote work armor. As I clicked into the waiting room, my heart was steady but cautious. The call began smoothly. I introduced myself, made a little joke about working from a creative chaos zone, and they laughed. Good sign. One of the partners asked about my research process, and I leaned incompetent. That's when it started. First the thumping like a bass from downstairs, then the unmistakable beat of EDM music bleeding through the ceiling. I tried to speak louder over it, smiling tightly. Then a loud yo echoed from upstairs. The music got louder and then the unmistakable sound of a soda can popping open followed by raucous laughter. Someone shouted, "Shotgun that one, bro." A second later, something shattered. Maybe a plate. Maybe my chances. I quickly muted myself, bolted up the stairs, and burst into Dorian's room. He was shirtless, holding a beer, laughing with 3 of his friends like it was spring break. My heart dropped. Not because of the noise, but because none of them even looked surprised to see me. "What are you doing?" I hissed. Dorian just raised an eyebrow. "Relax. It's just a couple friends." "You're always so uptight." I texted. "I asked for 1 hour." He turned to his buddies. "Did y'all hear about this Zoom meeting emergency? Should we call the governor?" They all laughed. Colleen suddenly appeared behind me holding a bowl of pretzels. "Sweetie, boys need to let loose. They're still young. Dorian is 35. I snapped. She waved it off like I was reading a weather report. Still figuring things out, I turned and walked away without saying another word. Back downstairs, I rejoined the Zoom call or tried to, but the screen had gone dark. My email pinged seconds later. "We appreciate your time, Maura, but we're going to move forward with someone else." The words hit me harder than the laptop crash 3 days ago. I sat there frozen, hearing nothing but muffled laughter upstairs and the blood pounding behind my eyes. An hour later, as I sat at the back steps sipping what was left of my cold coffee, my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't answer, but something told me to pick up. "Maura." The voice was warm, familiar. "It's Miss Green from high school, English Lit. I saw your mom at the store yesterday and well, she mentioned you were back home and no longer working. I just wanted to check in, dear. Are you okay?" For a moment, I couldn't respond. I'd spent over a decade building a reputation. Freelancing wasn't always respected, but I had clients, a network, testimonials. Now, apparently, I was the daughter who moved back in and gave up. I forced a smile into my voice. "I'm all right. Just taking some time to recalibrate." She sounded relieved. "Good. Just remember, you were always the strongest in the room, even when the room didn't know it." We said goodbye. I hung up slowly. Then I sat there for a long while. Phone on my lap, coffee forgotten. That call wasn't malicious. It came from care. But the message behind it, the damage had already been done. They weren't just hurting me inside these walls anymore. They were rewriting my story to the world outside. By sunset, I was still at the back steps. I scrolled through LinkedIn, staring blankly at job listings in Colorado, Seattle, even Vancouver. Anywhere that didn't know my last name. I started to wonder if I just disappeared, what version of me would they invent next? The unstable daughter, the one who couldn't make it on her own, the burden. That night, after everyone had gone to bed or passed out, I sat in the hallway with my phone and began recording quietly, just my own thoughts at first, then snippets, the way Dorian had screamed freeloader at me when I said no to lending him gas money. Mom's passive-aggressive reminders that I was lucky to have a roof over my head. Dad's silence that somehow always screamed louder than them both. I didn't plan to use the recordings, but I needed to remember what was real before they twisted it again. A week had gone by, and I had barely said more than 3 full sentences to anyone in this house. Most days, I kept my headphones on, even when the music wasn't playing, a quiet protest, or maybe a shield. I kept to myself, did my client work, answered emails, and cooked only what I would eat. I'd learned the hard way that even a plate of leftovers could be used against me in a family argument. But that morning, something threw me back into a memory I didn't want to revisit. It came without warning. The flash of an old conversation with my mother, the kind you try to forget, but always seems to resurface at the worst times. It was around 4 months ago. Dorian had racked up nearly $7,000 on a credit card. He came to me in the kitchen, holding the bill like it was a menu. I just need a cosigner just for 6 months. The bank said it'll boost my score. I had said no, not because I didn't want to help, but because I knew how this went. He'd forget or ignore, and I'd be stuck cleaning up after another one of his growth phases. When I told him I wouldn't do it, he stormed off. That night, Mom came into my room. "You're turning your back on your family," she whispered like it was a curse. "He's your brother. You think that fancy job makes you better than us?" I didn't answer her. I just stared at the spot where she used to hang my 3rd grade art award. It wasn't there anymore, probably covered by one of Dorian's gaming posters. Now, that memory faded back into the present as I opened the safe in my closet to pull out some cash. I needed $400 for a design plug-in license, one that wasn't cheap, but necessary for the proposal I was building. The safe opened with a soft click. I reached for the envelope marked work expenses. It was lighter than usual. I unfolded it. Gone. Not just $400. $2,500 in total. Missing. I checked the backup envelope. The emergency one. Same thing. My breath caught in my chest. I closed the safe and walked slowly out of my room like I was stepping through a dream, down the hall into the living room. Colleen was folding towels. "Did you take cash from my safe?" She didn't look up. "We needed to pay off a chunk of Dorian's credit." "You weren't using it." I stared at her. "Excuse me?" She dropped a towel onto the couch and stood up, folding her arms. "You always act like your money is separate from the family. But where do you think we'd be without you? Don't you think it's time you stopped keeping score? It wasn't yours to take." "Oh, Maura, it's not stealing, it's sharing. You always think the worst." Dorian strolled in from the garage, wiping grease off his hands with a kitchen towel. "Chill out. I'll pay you back eventually," he said, grabbing a soda from the fridge. "Seriously, you're acting like I cleaned out your retirement account." I didn't answer. There was no point. That evening, I opened the mailbox and found an envelope, handwritten, "No return address," but I recognized the loops and curves of my Aunt Teresa's writing immediately. I sat on the porch to open it. Inside was a short letter. "Dear Maura, I hope this reaches you in peace. I wanted to say something you deserve to know. At the last family brunch, Colleen told everyone you'd been unstable lately, that the breakup changed you, and you haven't been the same since moving home." I didn't believe her, but others. Well, they nodded. No one said anything. "I'm sorry for not speaking up in that moment," But I wanted you to hear it from someone who doesn't want to see your name dragged through the mud. Love, Teresa. I read the letter twice, then once more. Unstable. That word echoed. It wasn't just gossip. It was a loaded word. The kind that stuck. The kind that made people whisper in parking lots or pass glances at weddings. I folded the letter carefully, walked back inside, and locked my bedroom door. Then I changed the combination on my safe. That same night, I ordered a second one, a smaller safe, the kind you could bolt behind drywall or stash an event. I paid extra for express delivery. When it arrived 2 days later, I didn't tell anyone, just waited until midnight, unscrewed the vent behind my bed, and placed the new lockbox deep inside. I added a flash drive. Aunt Teresa's letter and a hard copy of every transaction they'd pulled from me in the last year. Not for revenge, just for the record. I needed something to hold on to, something that proved I wasn't imagining things. The next morning, I looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't look fragile. I looked practiced, like someone who had rehearsed a script so many times that no one could tell it was a performance anymore. They thought I was overreacting. They thought I was too emotional. What they didn't know was that I was paying for Dorian's medication refills, Dad's heart pills, half the groceries in the fridge, and the gas in the car Dorian drove daily. They thought I was ungrateful. But gratitude goes both ways. And in this house, it only ever flowed toward one side. I stared into my own eyes and whispered quietly, "You're not losing it. You're just living in a story they want you to forget." And if they kept rewriting my story, I'd start writing my own. A full week slipped by, one long stretch of avoidance padded with headphones and polite lies. I spent more time at cafes, sometimes just sitting with my laptop open and a half-drunk coffee beside me, pretending I had somewhere else to be, somewhere better than the house that drained me one sigh at a time. Late Friday afternoon, I returned home after meeting a client near Midtown. I'd closed a small contract, nothing major, but enough to feel like I still had something left to offer the world. As I stepped inside, balancing my keys, tote bag, and laptop, I caught sight of a suitcase near the guest room. It was open and not mine. Soft humming floated from inside, a female voice. Then I heard Dorian, "Babe, just throw your stuff wherever. My mom doesn't care." I froze, walked slowly toward the door, poked my head in. There she was, early 20s, maybe. Long fake nails, box-dyed red hair, unpacking her duffel bags onto the bed. She looked up at me like I was interrupting a Target commercial. "Oh, hey," she chirped. "You must be Maura. I've heard so much about you." I didn't answer. I turned to Dorian, who was digging through a basket of folded laundry. "Mine? She staying here?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. He barely looked up. "Yeah, just for a little while. Her roommate situation went south." "You didn't ask me." "It's not like you pay rent or something," he muttered. Before I could speak again, Colleen's voice came floating from the kitchen. "It's his house, too, Maura. You don't get to dictate everything. I live here." She came around the corner holding a half-peeled banana and a paper towel. "You're always acting like everything's about you." "It's not." I said nothing. Just walked to my room, set my laptop down, and sat at the edge of the bed for a full minute, staring at my window like the trees outside could explain how any of this made sense. That night, I tried to work from the dining table. Dorian and his girlfriend had taken over the living room. Loud TikToks blaring from her phone, open bags of chips rustling, soda fizzing. They laughed every few seconds like it was a game show. My call started at 6 p.m. sharp. A design review with a healthcare client based in Minneapolis. 15 minutes in, the client paused. "I'm sorry. Is that music in the background?" I muted quickly, dashed into the hallway. "Can you two keep it down for half an hour?" Dorian smirked. "If you need a library, go to one," his girlfriend added. "We're not that loud. You're just sensitive." I shut the door and tried to breathe. Back on the call, I pushed through, but by the time I was sharing my screen, the client had gone cold. They ended it with, "We appreciate the effort, Maura, but we need a more consistent working environment. Let's circle back in a few months." The screen went dark. And just like that, another $5,000 retainer vanished. I sat frozen, hands still on the keyboard. This wasn't just noise anymore. This was erosion. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just stood in the center of the living room and said, "We need to talk." Dorian paused the TV. Colleen walked in slowly, arms crossed. His girlfriend stayed on the couch, munching popcorn like it was entertainment. I kept my voice even. "This ends here. The chaos, the disrespect. You can live like this, but not with me. I won't fund it. I won't enable it. And I won't stay silent about it." Colleen rolled her eyes. "You've always had a flair for drama." Dorian scoffed. "So now you're the victim again." "No," I said clearly. "I'm just the only adult in this house." The room fell quiet. I let it hang for a beat, then added, "One more move against me, and I act." I didn't wait for replies. I turned and walked back to my room. The next morning, I started making quiet changes. Boxed up half my bookshelf, folded off-season clothes, and slid them into labeled bins. Nothing dramatic, nothing fast. I updated my cloud passwords, set up two-factor authentication, downloaded copies of all my client contracts, stored them on a private drive, and mailed a backup to my P.O. box, a new one I'd opened in Buckhead 2 days ago. I checked the property title of the house, still in my name. They didn't know that, but they would. Sunday morning in Atlanta felt unusually still. I'd made myself a cup of tea, not coffee. Something about the gentleness of it helped me think more clearly. I planned to transfer a portion of my savings into a high-yield account I'd recently opened. After all, if I was going to start over, I needed to secure every cent I'd worked for. I unlocked the closet, then the safe inside, a simple matte black model. Nothing flashy, but reliable. The combination clicked. I pulled open the door. Empty. No envelopes, no stacks, not even the folder labeled emergency. It took a moment for my brain to register what I was seeing. I looked again, even reached in, as if the money had simply turned invisible. $60,000 gone. Not reduced, not borrowed, gone. A wave of disbelief tightened across my chest. My heart began to thud in my ears. Not fast, just hard. I stood frozen for a minute, maybe two, staring into the dark hollow where my security used to sit. I didn't scream. I didn't rush. I just closed the safe gently and walked down the hall. Dorian was in the kitchen eating cereal straight from the mixing bowl. Colleen sat across from him, browsing resort packages on her tablet. Lester was at the table sipping coffee and flipping through an old issue of Southern Living. I didn't ask a question. I just said, "Where is it?" Colleen looked up, all innocence. "Where's what, sweetie?" "My savings. All of it." She blinked, then smiled like I just asked about the weather. "We used it," she said casually. "For something important." My voice was quiet. "You used it?" Dorian jumped in. "Don't freak out. It's for the trip. We're going to Hawaii next week." "Hawaii?" Colleen leaned forward, almost excited. "Maura, this isn't just a vacation. This is a reset for all of us. You stole from me." "Oh, don't be dramatic." She scoffed. "You've been so cold, so obsessed with your career." This was a wake-up call. Lester finally spoke. "You've lost sight of what matters. You needed to learn that money isn't the answer to everything." "You decided that for me?" I asked barely above a whisper. "You make six figures," Dorian added. "It's not like you're broke." "Chill." I stared at him. I couldn't feel my hands, my legs. My lips were numb. It was like my body had left before my mind had. Colleen stood and patted my shoulder. "You'll thank us later. We're healing as a family." Maybe when we get back, you'll see it. I stepped back, said nothing, and turned away. In my room, I closed the door, locked it, and sat on the floor. It took a full hour before I moved again. They'd called it a punishment for being distant, for protecting my peace, for not handing them everything I had. I stared at the deed again on my tablet, pulled up from my earlier search. My name, no cosigners, no caveats. They'd broken the last rule I'd never spoken out loud. You can hurt me with words, but not my future. And now they had. That night, I opened my laptop and sent an encrypted folder to an old friend of mine, Veronica, a corporate attorney now based in Philadelphia. No context, just a subject line. Need help? No drama, just law. Inside the folder, screenshots of previous transactions, ATM receipts, voice memos, photos of every envelope and safe combination I'd once shared. Veronica replied within 10 minutes. Understood. Start documenting utility transfers. I'll handle the paper trail. By the following morning, I'd made calls to the electric, water, and internet companies, set them to transfer into my name by Friday. I scheduled a locksmith for Saturday, the day after they left. Yes, left for their healing trip. I also booked 3 round-trip tickets from Atlanta to Honolulu, all in their names, all refundable, but only one-way returns just to make it easier. Then I visited the backup safe tucked behind the vent and added a new note. In thick black marker, I wrote, "You broke trust. Now watch what I rebuild." Later that night, we sat around the table eating takeout. Colleen didn't feel like cooking before the trip. Everyone was chatty. Dorian asked, "So, can we count on you to watch the house while we're gone?" I smiled. Of course. I'll take care of everything. Colleen raised her glass to fresh starts. I clinked mine with hers and nodded. Enjoy Hawaii. They all laughed and went on planning spa appointments and snorkeling excursions. None of them noticed me texting the locksmith. None of them saw me copy the security footage from the porch cam. None of them read my eyes, but they would. The morning after they left for Hawaii, I drove straight to my bank before sunrise. There were no lines. I walked in calm like any other customer. I'd like to close all co-signed accounts, I told the teller, sliding over my ID, and freeze anything tied to these joint credit cards permanently. She blinked, hesitated for just a moment, and nodded. One moment, Miss Hayward. While she worked behind the screen, I felt a small flicker of something new, not fear, not anger, control. After that, I visited each utility website, power, water, gas, internet, logged in, clicked transfer service. I typed in my apartment address, the one I'd secured last month, under a different LLC, just in case. By 4 p.m., every connection to this house, every shared responsibility, every thread of financial obligation I'd carried for them was severed. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with a real estate agent I'd gone to college with. Matt, he still called me M by habit, short for my middle name. Are you sure about this? He asked, scanning the deed again. You'll get a decent offer, even off market. It's a big lot for the area. I'm not just sure, I said. I'm ready, he nodded. I'll keep it private. You'll have a signed offer by Wednesday. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt unburdened. Over the next 3 days, I worked methodically. Room by room, I boxed up every item that didn't belong to me. Dorian's sneakers boxed. Mom's framed quotes from the Bible wrapped in bubble paper. Dad's fishing gear he hadn't touched in 3 years, taped shut with a printed label. Newark. Each box had a name, a destination, a tracking number. Even Dorian's PlayStation, still plugged into the living room TV, went into its original box with every cord neatly coiled. I didn't throw away anything. I just removed it all. The house grew emptier, quieter, lighter. I packed the last of their things by Friday night, then left the final box on the porch for the shipping company. I watched from the upstairs window as the delivery team loaded everything into the back of a van. Gone. By Saturday morning, I moved into my new apartment across town. A furnished 1-bedroom with a clean white kitchen and thick windows that muted the world. For the first time in years, I fell asleep without checking over my shoulder. They returned from Hawaii 2 days later. The airport footage, which I pulled up from the door cam archive later, showed them laughing, tanned, Dorian pushing 2 oversized bags with stickers that read, "Aloha from Maui." Their Uber pulled into the driveway. The porch was bare except for one laminated sign taped to the front door. Property sold. New ownership. Welcome package inside. From my parked car down the street, I watched Colleen squint at it, then rattle the doorknob. It didn't turn. Lester tried his key. Nothing. Dorian knocked loudly. "Mora," he shouted. "Open up." That's when I pulled into the driveway, rolled down the window, and said calmly, "Get in. I'll explain on the way." They hesitated. "Now," I said. They climbed in silent. No one spoke until we were halfway out of Atlanta. "Where are we going?" Colleen finally asked. "New Jersey?" Dorian scoffed. "What is this? Some kind of punishment?" "You told me I needed a lesson," I replied, eyes steady on the road. "Consider this a course correction." Lester muttered something about overreacting. Colleen kept repeating, "You can't just kick us out. That house was ours." "No, it wasn't," I said. "Not legally, not financially, and not morally." 3 hours later, we pulled up to a modest blue house in a quiet New York suburb. Delma was already waiting outside in a flour-dusted apron, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She stepped forward and opened the front door. "Welcome. Room assignments are taped to the fridge. First meal is at 6. First shift starts at 7. No slackers." Colleen gasped. "You can't be serious." Delma arched an eyebrow. "Oh, I'm dead serious. You wanted structure, right?" I didn't go inside. I placed their final envelopes, IDs, new debit cards, and one bus schedule on the porch step. Delma gave me one long look. "You okay?" "I am now," I said. She nodded once slowly. "Good. You did the hard part." As I drove away, I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I didn't have to. I could feel the shift in my chest, like the ground beneath me had finally gone still. My hand stayed on the wheel. No trembling, no second thoughts. I hadn't just reclaimed my house. I'd reclaimed myself. It had been 7 days since I dropped them at Velma's front steps, and already the air inside the house was thicker than any garlic-scented kitchen steam. Delma ran her restaurant like an orchestra, precise, disciplined, and loud when it needed to be. Her voice echoed every morning before sunrise. Shoes on, hair tied back, no phones. By now, I'd fallen into a rhythm. Light prep, remote work on my laptop, inventory checks. I wasn't trying to be part of the family anymore. I was just witnessing them come face to face with themselves. Dorian, on the other hand, was unraveling. He slept late, skipped his assigned kitchen rotation, and claimed he was managing stress. Delma didn't respond to that. She just handed him a checklist and walked away. By the 3rd time he ditched duty, something snapped. It was Thursday, just before lunch rush. I was sitting in the corner of the dining area, double-checking wireframe designs for a new client. My coffee was still warm. Then Dorian stormed in, arms flailing, face flushed. "I'm not flipping pizzas like some servant." I didn't even look up at first. He slammed a tray onto the counter, sending utensils scattering. "You set this whole thing up, didn't you? This is your fault." I met his eyes slowly, calm as a lake. "This is the first honest job you've ever been offered, Dorian. You've always thought you were better than me. Don't pretend now. You made that comparison, not me." He turned to our mother, who was scrubbing a cutting board like it owed her something. "You're just letting her talk to me like that." Colleen glanced up half-heartedly. "Maybe if you helped around here more, she wouldn't have to." Dorian's eyes went wild. In one sudden movement, he picked up a pan from the sink and hurled it into the dish pit. It clanged against the metal like a fire alarm. Velma walked in just in time to see it land. She didn't yell. She didn't blink. She picked up a mop, handed it to him, and said, "Clean it now." He sneered. "You've got to be kidding." Velma held out an apron this time. "Fine, don't clean, then clean out. My house isn't a shelter. It's a system." I stood. "I gave you years to grow up. Years. And all you did was make excuses." Dorian turned to me, voice shaking. "All you ever do is judge me like you're some perfect daughter." I didn't raise my voice. "I judged you the day you took $60,000 of my savings and called it a lesson in humility." The room went silent. Colleen's sponge dropped into the sink. Even Lester, usually a shadow in a chair, muttered, "He's not wrong to be angry, but he's not right either." Velma crossed her arms. "Anger doesn't bake bread. Responsibility does." I looked at Dorian, but I didn't soften. "You wanted to live like an adult. Welcome to adulthood. It doesn't wait for your feelings." He stomped out. We heard his door slam minutes later. Dinner came and went. He didn't show up. But just after 9, the hallway creaked. I peeked through the back prep room window and saw him standing there, a duffel bag in hand. He looked around. No one said a word. Colleen turned her face toward the TV. He stood there for a beat longer, then dropped the bag. Without a word, he walked into the kitchen, picked up the mop from where Velma had left it and began wiping the floor. She didn't thank him. She just nodded once and went back to rolling dough. Later that night, I slipped out the back door and leaned against the brick wall by the trash bins. The alley behind the restaurant smelled of tomato paste and oregano. But for once, I didn't feel buried. I just felt still, like I had cleared enough space in my chest to breathe fully again. Maybe for the first time. They thought I came to break them. I only came to show them the mirror. What they do with it now is their choice. It was a Thursday morning. Gray skies pressing low over the cracked sidewalk out back. The scent of rain still clinging to the dumpsters. Inside, the restaurant was warm, the kind of heat that came from dough proofing and something old simmering on the stove. I was folding napkins when Velma walked in without her usual clatter. She nodded at the empty seat beside me and said, "You got a minute?" I nodded and put the napkins aside. She didn't sit right away. She reached for a flour container, twisted the lid slowly. Then finally, she lowered herself beside me, her elbows resting on the table. "You know," she started. "Pride and pain, they can look real similar, especially on smart women." I didn't say anything. Velma took a long pause before continuing. "I've been around people who were right. Righteous even. But sometimes being right still don't fill the hole, especially when bitterness sets up camp." She turned toward me then, her eyes softer than usual. "I've seen what they took from you, Maura. I don't need details to know it was real, but justice held in one hand and silence in the other. That don't heal nobody." I stared at a knot in the wooden table. My fingers ran over it slowly. Velma reached for the rolling pin like the conversation was already done. "Let them be the ones to earn back peace. You just don't let their damage become your compass." I didn't respond, but something in me shifted. Not cracked open, just shifted. By Saturday, something else changed. I came downstairs early before the clatter of prep began. The air smelled of yeast and oregano again, but the music was different. It was quieter. Not from the radio, but from the energy in the room. Dorian was already there, not scrolling his phone, not sipping orange juice while the rest of us worked. He was mopping carefully. Later, he ran food to a table, then wiped down the windows without being told. When one of the delivery orders came back missing an item, he didn't blame the driver. He fixed it himself. No apology, no speech, just work. I didn't trust it, but I noticed. That night, I was in my room upstairs filing invoices and trying to figure out if I could afford a second design assistant when there was a knock. I hesitated, then opened the door. Dorian stood there holding a white envelope. He didn't meet my eyes right away. I know what I did, he said quietly. I know I can't take it back. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want to do better. Not for Mom or Velma or show for real this time. He handed me the envelope. Inside was $1,200 in small bills. Tips, he said. All mine. Been saving all week. It's not 60 grand, but. I didn't say anything. I just folded the envelope and placed it on my desk. Then I nodded. Once he looked relieved, not proud, not smug, just lighter. And then he left. Sunday dinner came around and for the first time in months, I joined them at the table. Velma passed the bread. Lester poured drinks. Colleen asked if I wanted salad first. No one made a speech. But when dinner ended, Colleen stood up and started doing the dishes without a word. Lester mentioned that the local hardware store needed part-time help, and he might stop by tomorrow. I didn't reply, but I didn't leave either. After the dishes were stacked, and the kitchen was quiet again, I went upstairs, pulled out a sticky note, and wrote something simple. Let's not repeat what we buried. 1 mistake is a lesson. 2 is a pattern. I stuck it on the fridge. Then I went outside, leaned against the wooden porch rail, and exhaled. It wasn't healing yet, but it was something. They didn't need to say thank you because for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for one. It had been a month of no yelling through walls, no footsteps stomping past midnight, no passive-aggressive comments laced into dinner, just me, my apartment, my rules. That morning, I placed the manila envelope into my canvas tote and headed toward Velma's house. I wasn't nervous. Not like before. My shoulders didn't curl inward anymore. My jaw didn't lock. It was early before prep began at the restaurant. The sidewalks in Newark still shimmered with dew. I passed the bakery where I sometimes grabbed muffins on Mondays and the bus stop where I used to see my dad stand awkwardly waiting for Colleen after doctor appointments. When I reached Velma's porch, I didn't knock. Just let myself in like I always used to. They were gathered in the kitchen. Dorian scrubbing a pan. Colleen wiping down the counters. Lester reading something off his phone. I cleared my throat. Colleen looked up first. Maura, I'm not staying long. I pulled the envelope from my bag and set it on the table. What's this? Lester asked, reaching for it. Final paperwork from the house. I met his eyes. It's over. The money's been split 3 ways fairly. It's clean and it's legal. I don't want it hanging over me or you. Dorian put the sponge down. You didn't have to. I did. I cut him off gently. Not for you. For me. Colleen pressed her lips together, nodding. No protest. No defense. Dorian stepped forward. I know I've said a lot of things that didn't help, but I'm still showing up. I'm still trying. He didn't try to hug me. Just let the words sit there. I looked at him. Really looked. He was tired. He had circles under his eyes, but he also had calluses now. From work, from effort. I see it. I said, that's enough for today. Velma stood in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. She's right. Some days showing up is enough. The restaurant smelled like buttered dough and black coffee. Velma walked me to the door, a mason jar in her hand. Tomato basil. Use it when life feels too bland, she said, pushing it into my tote. I don't know if they'll ever be different, I admitted. They won't be who you needed, she said. But neither will you, and that's okay, I nodded. Then I stepped back out into the street. The walk to my apartment was slow. I stopped at the corner florist to buy myself a sunflower. Just one. Back home, I set the jar on my counter, placed the flower into a glass, and sat by the window with my laptop. A new email blinked in bold. Subject: Remote UX Partnership Inquiry from Rebecca K., Client Services Director. I read the message twice. A long-term contract, good pay, creative freedom. I hit accept. Then I watered the small potted lavender by the windowsill. Rearranged some books. Hung a new calendar. No alarms, no slam doors, just the quiet hum of my own rhythm. Later that evening, I opened the top drawer of my desk. Tucked into the back was a photo of me and Dorian, both of us maybe 8 or 9, covered in cake at someone's birthday party. I didn't frame it. I didn't toss it. I just taped it to the back of the drawer and closed it slowly. They broke me, I whispered. Then they bent. And that was the truth. Not forgiveness, not forgetting, but a space between, a place to stand. Because I wasn't waiting for perfect anymore. I was living with Real.